All right, good morning, everyone. Futures Barizio here. Figured I'd try to jump on a little bit earlier. It is 10:20 a.m. on Thursday, October 16th. Hope you're having a good morning. And just want to jump in and, like I said, just go over a couple of quick things. I'm not going to rehash everything I did on last night's video, but just a quick summary of that is basically, given the fact that we are not going to have commitment of traders data anytime soon, depends when the U.S. government shutdown ends. I kind of lean back more towards longer term technical trading, which isn't fully ideal because it's basically like trading with one hand behind your back. I know there are people out there that are just 100% technical traders. And that's fine if it works for you, but the fact of the matter is you have to have some grasp of the underlying fundamentals of some point, whether it's economic news, whether it's commitment of traders, depending what markets you're trading. And so because of that, not having that information for how I like to use, which is COT data primarily, and also, any USDA, United States Department of Agriculture reporting, all of that is suspended right now until the government shutdown ends. And so, as I stated last night, I'm going to kind of more long-term charts. I went through showing you levels on 12-hour charts on my MetaTrader account. And I also talked about using one indicator. So here I am on TradingView. This is my funded account. And I'm on an 8-hour chart here, and this works from a 4-hour chart and higher. Now, look, any indicator is always going to generate false signals. It's just the way it is. You have to use it in conjunction with other visual tools on the chart, and not just blindly follow signals. But what I put up on here, and I talked a little bit about this last night in conjunction with COT backtesting, but you can see we just moved the COT aside and just look at this. This is the MACD. It's just the simple MACD. I haven't changed the settings, default settings, 12/26/9. The only thing I did here is I took the histogram off and I took the zero line off because I don't really need it. The histogram is kind of duplicative. All the histogram does is it shows the strength of the move beyond the zero line, which you can see without the histogram. So I think the histogram just makes the chart more busy to look at. And so what I did here is, there's a, for instance, example. This is British pound futures. You can see that during the overnight session last night, 2 a.m. my time, which is right around, that's about the London Open or the Frankfurt Open, 2-3 a.m. We did have a crossover here. I wasn't awake then, so obviously I didn't take the trade then, but I did take a trade this morning, and you can see it's up mildly. It's not like real big, $180 right now. But I took this strictly on this setup. Now, the other thing is for the British pound is the last time, and I've mentioned this a few times, the last time we did have COT data, the British pound was showing a more bullish stance, okay, in terms of COT right here. Okay, the COT index was up. I don't follow seasonality on currencies. That's why these all say NA. But this was the last update. I actually should change this because 10/7 is when I wrote this document, but the data on here is as of September 23rd, and that's the last time we had an update. So I'm going to just change it to that just to make it more realistic. And then, once we do finally get COT data back, I'll be able to update this column right here and the notes section if applicable. But getting back to this, so so I'm in this trade. We can sit here and draw trend lines and such, to say like, this thing is sitting basically potentially breaking a trend line. Again, guys, I'm not a huge fan of trend lines only because you can make a trend line say almost anything you want. So I think they fulfill biases a lot of times. I'm not saying there's no usefulness to them. And in hindsight, they always look great, but in real time, they can often be fake outs because the banks and the large trade institutional trade, they know people, retail traders are drawing trend lines on their charts, and so unfortunately that can happen. But anyways, I took this signal strictly off of the MACD. And again, I think this works better on higher time frames. So I'm not saying you can't use it on a 15-minute chart or a 1 hour chart if you want to scalp something. But in terms of more reliable signals, you'll see the further you go out on time frames, you're going to get less signals, but they tend to be more reliable when you back test them. It doesn't mean you can hold these trades forever. You do have to still understand what the larger trend is. And on this particular asset, we've been really moving sideways here on the British pound futures here for really since about May of this year. We haven't really done much. And, every time it comes down to this low down here, it tends to move higher. So that's why, from a technical standpoint, I think it's due for a bounce and move higher, even if it only goes back towards these highs. There is a break of a trend line, and we do have the MACD signal on the 8-hour chart. So that's why I took this trade. How long will I hold it? I don't know. We'll see. So just looking at a few other markets here, and we're just going to do the same thing, and I'm going to stick to the 8-hour chart. So on natural gas, there's really nothing. We do have this trend line here on natural gas that's been causing these downtrends. We zoom out here, and I talked about this on my video yesterday. There's a very clear higher time frame. This is the daily chart time frame trend line here. But so again, this is one of those things where you could see a short-term bounce. Like there's a buy signal that happened back on September 25th right here. And, you could have traded this all the way back to the trend line, right? If you had drawn the trend line from the first 2 points, that would have been a, kind of a good target area. So that, keeps in mind that the trend was down, but, you're basically trading a reversal, which is more risky because you're going against the larger trend, but you can do it. And then, of course, we had a sell signal to get back into the short, basically here. You can see this crossover signal here. Once it tagged the trend line. So you could have either traded off this rejection. This was the best place to enter off this rejection on a shorter time frame to find a good entry. But even if you just followed this 8-hour chart, this would have been your entry right here. But you would have had quite a bit of drawdown. I mean, this drawdown went on for, let's see, this is October 3rd, Friday the 3rd. And it wasn't until October 8th. We did have a weekend in between, so that's 4th, 5th. So this is, this crossover happened on a Friday. It wasn't until the following Wednesday. So an additional 3 trading days before the downtrend actually resumed. So, if you had just stopped sitting up here above here, you were okay, but this is pretty heavy drawdown on a higher time frame. But anyways, the signal was valid though. It's just, oftentimes when you get these initial moves down, you're going to get a pullback after that first push down because they're trying to flush out, in this case, any short positions and scare people out of their trades. So anyways, that's natural gas. Crude oil, I'm actually in a losing trade on this right now, as you can see. I took this signal last night. So I'm probably going to close this one because it's in a pretty big loss right now. And it's just really not worth holding on to. So after this video, I'm probably going to look at that closely. Corn, we do have a buy signal here on corn. And in fact, you know what? Hold on one sec for me, guys. I just need to pause the vid for a sec. All right, guys. So anyways, I actually just took a long position on corn just based on this COT. And again, from a seasonality standpoint, in the last COT data we had, corn was in a bullish stance. Okay, so that's part of the reason why I took this, not just the indicator, but from seasonality standpoint. And you can see we did have this big move up. We go out to the daily chart. We could almost throw a trend line across here. We haven't really breached it yet, so we'll see. But we had this impulsive move up, and then we've had this kind of long, slow correction down. So I'm still, from a seasonality and a COT data, this market should be going higher. And so let's see if this plays out. All right, so on to soybean meal. We don't really have a signal. You can see I've got this trend line drawn on the 8-hour chart. The MACD is not really giving much of a signal. If we get some nice bullish price action to clear this trend line and get that signal, then that might be considering a long. Again, the whole soy complex from a seasonality standpoint is bullish, okay? But there's no trade on this right now. So on to soybeans. You can see I took this soybean trade based on this. And again, seasonality on soybeans is bullish. I took this trade. We had this bullish move up, pull back. We failed to take out this low. You can see it's in a small profit right now. Soybean oil, again. You can see this note I put on my chart. This was during the Asian session last night. And this is moving higher. Again, the whole soy complex, other than soybean meal, I guess, does seem to want to move higher. I think I have enough exposure with soybeans, so I'm probably not going to take this one. Given that, again, I have that soybean trade on, I'm fine with that. Although this looks like a decent setup too. I actually would be more apt to take the soybean meal, because if soybean meal can break above this trend line, can get above here, I think that would be that would pull in a lot of buyers and push this thing higher. So, and this, where it's kind of walking along the trend line here on the 8-hour chart, just keeps throwing wicks. It can't break out, but it can't go lower either. It's trying to go lower, it gets bought back up, tries to break out, gets sold off. So I'm more apt to wait for a nice bullish candle to pop above here. And, to me, that would be a more impressive move. So just doing that. And then let's see here. British pound. Again, I think I already just talked about this. I'm in this British pound trade. Again, it's up a couple $100. And so I already talked about that. So let's go to Australian dollar. Again, no signal here. Looks like it's trying to go higher. The Australian dollar from a COT, again, last COT update was still bearish. Okay. So this would be, if you got a bullish signal here, it would be counter trend, at least based on the last data, data that we had. All right. And, again, we can throw a trend line on there and say, we get a bullish signal. Is this going to be a higher low right here? Fail to make a new low and go higher? I don't know. Could be. We haven't got a signal yet on the MACD. We did have a buy signal here on Euro FX. This happened. This actually happened yesterday afternoon, around 1800 hours. That's like 6 o'clock last night, which I don't trade during that time. That's like Asian changeover. So I certainly wouldn't have taken this trade then, but it's played out, and we are now technically above this trend line right here, just barely. But again, we do have kind of a liquidity zone. So, let's see what happens. Are we going to just get a push above here, back towards this level, and then reject? But, that is a potential zone too. All right, and then on the Kiwi dollar, again, we do have a bullish crossover signal on the Kiwi dollar, but again, we still are in a quite persistent downtrend here. We did have one breach of the trend line here. This obviously was a fake breakout where we had, 4 or 5 candles. So this is, a day plus, day and a half where the price did breach the trend line and then came down again, and we had this big bearish candle and pushed it back to new lows. So to me, this is kind of our current structure level here on the daily or the 8-hour chart. This was the last big pullback into the trend line, was somewhere around here. We can tighten this up a little bit here, probably something like this. All right. So, but again, we do have a bullish signal here, but again, it's counter trend. And if we were going to trade this, I'd be very cautious about overshooting this too much. I'd be probably looking for like a Fibonacci to exit this trade, whether it be the 50% or 61.8, somewhere up in here to do that. If I was going to take but I'm not in any position here. I only have this British pound long on right now. And I took the British pound long because this, again, the COT data on GBP USD was bullish on the last update. So again, I don't know what's happened. We haven't got an update in a couple of weeks. It'll be 3 weeks tomorrow, actually, which is, really making the old data pretty useless at this point, considering it's already delayed when it comes out. But if I was going to take one, I was leaning more towards. If I was going to take a long, I was leaning more towards the GBP than any of these other ones. Do I even have Euro up here? No, I don't even have Euro up here. So let's look at the Euro. Last update we had on the Euro. Again, this is old data, so but let's just see where the COT index was on the Euro. So it was in a bearish stance. You can see it's been trading in this oversold area for a long time. In this, well, not over. I don't want to call it oversold. It's extreme short area, but we haven't seen where that's going because we haven't had an update again since September 23rd. So again, not fully comfortable taking that long just based on that, but from a pure technical signals, there is a long potentially here, but I'm not taking this one. So anyway, so that's where we stand today, guys. I just think that we really have limited options in terms of COT until we get the market back, the government shutdown ended. And this is a good alternate way of just using technicals and maybe still trying to pull in seasonal data in the ag markets to help you position some at least short-term trades. These are higher time frames, but so you still may not hold them for that long though. Especially if they're counter trend, and we do have a lot of counter trend setups right now. But those are not always bad. You just have to be aware of what's the larger trend, where are the liquidity zones, where are the areas where price is likely to turn back. Like we had this buy signal right here. You could have gone long something around here. This was September 29th. And if you held it all the way until the next flip over, well, I wouldn't have held it to the next flip. But if you held it up and you say, okay, well, I'm heading back towards the trend line, that was about a week and a half you would have held that trade. And it would have been a nice trade. So, but it is against the trend, and you just have to be aware of that. So don't trade those signals blindly. Make sure you understand where the trend is on the higher time frames, 12-hour daily chart, and just look, where could this turn around? Will it turn around? If that larger trend's going to continue, where do you think it will turn around? Are you going to use a fib retracement? Are you going to use a trend line? Are you going to just use a previous swing high or swing low? What are you going to do? Where's your line going to be before you exit that position? Make sure you know that going in, especially if you're trading against the larger trend. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's obviously a little bit more risky, and you have to just make sure you're aware of what you're trading into. So, because if that larger trend does kick back in, it usually is going to be pretty violent, like with a large candle against your position, and you very quickly can go from having a nice profit to a break even, or even suffering at a loss, when you didn't have to, if you kind of understood the larger trend. So, all right. Anyways, guys, I'm just going to leave it there. Not much else to talk about right now, but I thought I would just jump in, show you a couple of positions that are open, a couple of winning ones, one losing one. Because of that crude oil trade being in such loss, I'm probably sitting about break even on the day. So, but that's okay. That is part of the deal with using technicals only, is that you are kind of, flying a little bit blind, one hand behind your back type thing. So, But I might just hold that trade because we're sitting at such extreme lows in oil, and there is kind of a small double bottom forming. So maybe it will bounce off there. We'll see. I'll keep an eye on it. Anyways, guys, make sure you smash that like button on the way out. Subscribe to the channel. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. And I'll talk to you soon. All right, thanks.